So looking at this scientific calculator, some keystrokes that I want you to be aware of. Obviously, you have your basic numbers, you have your basic operations. Okay, a couple things that we need to be aware of. It is true for this calculator and the graphing calculator that a negative, if you want to type in a negative, right, that's below the 3. Whereas the subtraction is over to the right of the numbers with the operations. Oftentimes my students will say to me that they're getting an error either on their scientific calculator or on the graphing calculator. And one of the biggest errors that I see from students is that they swapped out a subtraction and a negative. Now, if you look really closely when you type them both into your calculator, they visually look different. It's hard to tell, but they look different. So right now in your calculator, it's not going to equal anything. Type in a subtraction sign and then type in a negative. It'll say like A and S, it will pull up the answer, but type a subtraction and then type a negative. Okay, so do you see how the subtraction sign is a little bit larger and more centered? Right, the negative is a little bit smaller and a little bit up above. It will not tell you that that's what the error is. It won't say, oh, you typed a negative instead of a subtraction. So you'll have to be able to look at it and go, oh, that looks a little bit too tiny to be a subtraction. That needs to be switched to a negative. That's one thing we need to know. Another thing that we need to know is we need to know some keystrokes that we can use just in terms of other operations. So to the left of the 7, there is an x squared button. This is for your exponent of 2. It is only for your exponent of 2. It does not work for any other power. If you want to type in any other exponent, then you need to use the button that's right above the exponent of 2. So right above the exponent of 2, you see 2 sides of a triangle. That's our up caret button. And this is for any other exponent. Okay, if you go back to the 7 and then you go up 1, 2, 3 buttons, there is a button that says ABC on it. This is your button that you use for fractions. We're going to talk about how we use these keys in just a minute. I just want to make sure you sort of know what they do. This is going to be the biggest difference between this calculator and the graphing calculator. Fractions are much more difficult. I don't know if difficult, sorry, but they're very different than how we do them on this calculator. Okay, in the top left-hand corner, even if your calculator is a different color than mine, you should have a second button that's a different shade, a different color. That second button allows you to access anything that's in the writing above the actual keys, right? So that light blue writing above the buttons, you access by pressing that second button. So your second button in the top corner gives you access to the info above the other buttons. So in every situation we're about to look below this, you are going to have to press it first. So you'll press second, and then whatever we're about to talk about. Okay, so one of the big things my students tell me is that they're bad with percents. Your calculator will do percents for you. If you look above the 8, there's your open parenthesis, but in the light writing above it, there's a percent symbol. That allows you to enter percents. So if you press second, because we're always doing that first, and then you press your open parenthesis, that will do percents for you. If you press second and then x squared, that will do your square roots for you. If you press second and then you press your ABC button, that fraction button we were talking about, this will take you from a mixed fraction to an improper fraction. This is one of the most important buttons. Or it will go the other way, so you can go mixed to improper or improper to mixed. And like I said, it's okay right now. I just want you to write down all the keystrokes so that you have them. We'll practice how we do them here in a minute. Okay, the big thing is students raise their hand and are like, wait, what key lets me do that? You'll need to know that it's pressing second and then the ABC button that lets you go mixed to improper. No one will be able to tell you that on state testing or anything else, so I won't tell you when you're doing like your final exam or things in here. I'll say, oh, go back and check your notes. Right, that's what we would all do. We would all Google it if we needed to. Right, if you don't know something in life, you Google it, you check your notes, you check what info you can find. Okay, if you press second and then the PRB, which is directly above the ABC, that's too similar of a color. This will allow you to do a decimal to a fraction. Or again, the other direction, a fraction to a decimal. This is really helpful when you get a decimal answer, but it's a repeating decimal and you would have to round it. So it's better to write it as a fraction. Okay, if you hit second and then PRB, that will flip it for you. I think that's all we need to do keystroke-wise right now. Okay, so for your scientific calculator, that's all I really necessarily need you to write down. You might want to jot down some things to yourself as we're going through problems. If you're like, ooh, I'm going to forget that, I should make some notes to myself. But there's nothing else that you need to, or I'm saying, if this were weak, I would check your notebook. I wouldn't look for anything past this. Okay, so now put your scientific calculator right in front of you. I want you like looking at this. I want us practicing with this. Okay, so let's say we want to put into our calculators. Here's a common issue. This. What does this say? Your last name's long, right? But what's your first name? I can't remember.
Presley.
Oh, Presley. What would we type in?
4 minus -17.
Right, this is 4 minus -17. So I want you to type this in your calculator. Then hit equals.
21.
We get 21? We all agree? this one say? How would we read this? Lily?
Negative 8 minus negative 4.
What do those parentheses mean? Not here. Because this is negative 8 minus negative 4. So this is often where students get tricked. So, guys, just type it in exactly how you see it. If you're not sure if the parentheses need to be there, just put them there. If they were there, you won't be wrong. So the parentheses are above your 8 and your 9, right, with your numbers. Type them in exactly how you see it, because this is the exact issue I'd expect. Students come and they say, well, is this multiplication or is this subtraction? If you're not sure, type it in your calculator just how you see it. Your calculator knows the correct operation. So we would type in negative 8 minus negative 4, and what do we get out? Negative 4. Are we all seeing negative 4 in our calculator? Okay, we're okay there. Okay, so 3 squared, where's your exponent button? Where do you do your exponent of 2? Left of the 7, yep, so type in 3 squared. Stop me, guys, for real, if you are not finding these keys, just say, Mrs. McKinney, I'm lost. I will help you. Now is the time to ask. It is not a problem. What do we get when we type in 3 squared? 9, we're okay with that? Type in negative 4 to the 3rd. What do we get out on this one?
Negative 64.
Negative 64. We okay with that? Okay, now watch this carefully. Put that in your calculator, which is still negative 4 to the 3rd. What do we get out, Charlie?
64.
Positive 64? Did those parentheses matter? Yes. This one says to take 4 to the 3rd power and then make it negative. This one says take negative 4 to the 3rd power. So if you aren't getting one is positive and one is negative in your calculator, let me know. We want to make sure we're entering this correctly. Oh, because this is a negative to the 3rd. It's negative 64. But we have to type the parentheses. Sorry. I was thinking I had it as squared. But we have to, like, these parentheses have to happen. Have to. Okay, if you don't put in the parentheses, you won't get the right answer. Okay, then how about fractions? What if we want to do something like 4 1/2 minus 2 1/3? How many of you remember and can subtract these correctly by hand? Maybe a couple of us, right? So just use your calculator. If you want to type in 4 1/2, you're going to type 4, then you'll type the ABC button, then you'll type 1, then you'll type the ABC button again, then you'll type 2. This tells your calculator 4 1/2. Okay, then you'll subtract 2 ABC1, ABC3. What do we get? 2 1/6. We could enter fractions the same if it was multiplication, if it was division, if it was anything. Which I'm going to have you practice in a little bit. So tell me right now if you're not figuring out how to enter a fraction. Yes, Ravian?
I didn't get that.
Oh, I just want you, so once you do this, so do your 4 ABC, ABC1, ABC2, and then subtract off 2 ABC1, ABC3. Are we okay with that being 2 1/6 and reading that as 2 1/6? Okay. Okay. Then I want you to type into your calculator, let's say we have 28 over 10, and we want to reduce 28 over 10. So if we want to reduce 28 over 10 in our calculators, we can just type this in as a fraction. So type in 28, ABC 10, then hit equals. Right, that 2 4/5, is it reduced? But what happens if we don't want it as a mixed number, but instead we want it as an improper fraction? Right, so in our list we said that we could do second and then hit ABC, and that would turn it into an improper fraction that was reduced. And we should get out 14/5. Right, so this is 2 4/5, but then we can also change it into 14/5. Okay, but maybe we don't want it as a fraction at all. Maybe we actually want it as a decimal. So we would do second and then PRB.
2.8.
And then equals. Hang on, ladies, so we can make sure everyone is on the same page. Are we okay with 2.8? Let's say we put something in and we divide. So let's take 11 divided by 3. So we're going to divide this out. We're going to do 11 divided by 3 equals. We see 3.66666667. And we can't write down 3.66666666666666. Our choice is either to use a repeating bar. Okay, but if we needed to plug that into our calculator, that's not any good. So instead, we could change that back into a fraction. So we could get the fraction version of it by hitting second PRB and then equals, and getting the 3 2/3 out. Does that make sense? Okay. There's one more common thing that we will see happen here with fractions. I want you to enter the fraction 17 over -2. So 17 ABC -2. Then hit equals. And we see error. The reason why we see an error is because